When Ryan's when it's time to begin, it's on the Rewind Around with John Pollock and Wai Ting, the A-Team that makes sense of these things we see in the ring every week on TV. It's Rewind Around for Monday night, download it Tuesday morning from the Post Wrestling site. It's Rewind Around for Monday night on USA Now on the John and Wai Take the Mic.
Welcome everybody to Rewind a Raw. My name is Wai Ting, and if you're hearing my voice, that means John Pollock is somewhere off the map right now. Who knows where he is, but the man is taking just a brief leave of absence. John will join me again tomorrow on Rewind Away and all the other subsequent shows this weekend. But taking his place just for a very brief while, I am so honored to be doing a show with brother Nate Milton, the king of sport, the Nubian wrestling advocate himself. Nate, how you doing?
I'm doing well, brother Ting. I mean, I was just minding my own business out here in Virginia, and all of a sudden, Wai showed up in my room, listeners, and he said, John Pollock has disappeared, so we need you to answer the call. And so I suited up and hopped in the multiverse machine, and Wai and I are now here to talk about a truly monumental, I guess you could say, episode of Monday Night Raw.
Are you sure about that? Have you not reviewed a divorce episode of either WCW or TNA Impact in your lifetime? I could swear that this has already been done.
I know we've done weddings that have ended badly. I'm not sure if I've ever reviewed a divorce angle before.
Amazing. Well, let's go through this whole process together, Nate.
How you doing, Wai? It's been a long time since you and I have done a show.
And yeah, John usually gets all the fun talking to you, like for your Impact reviews. Of course, you know, you have a great roster of guests on the Rocky Maivia Picture Show, heard on this very podcast feed, but we haven't really had a chance to talk just solo in a while. I've been well, man. Yeah, I've been well. Just busy with all this.
Yes, I've been busy as well, my friend. And as you mentioned, the multitude of podcasts that I'm working on. And yeah, I'm glad the holidays are coming up. So maybe, you know, you, me, and John and everybody involved at Post can have a little bit of a break, even though I know that won't happen.
You know, it's kind of honestly like with our schedule, like because like we're going to Japan as well for Wrestle Kingdom, like we have to do a lot of pre-recording ahead of time. So there definitely will still be some time for a break, but you know, it's pretty consistent and pretty constant. But nonetheless, it's a dream job. So how can we really complain? Did you do any shopping? Are you done all your shopping right now?
Yeah, I do my shopping online. Like I've completely given up on going to real stores, like brick and mortars. Like I guess it's just convenience, and also why deal with crazy people during the holidays when you don't have to?
Oh, it's the worst. Yeah. No, I totally understand. John and I have been talking about this all week about just how much better life is when you don't have to deal with other people, or you only deal with them via computer screen, I guess. No, there are social elements of, I think, the whole thing that you know you can miss, but yeah, for the most part, I mean, I prefer to not do that type of socializing during the holidays when everybody's there.
And I think like if my nieces lived up here in Virginia, that might be different, you know, because I think with kids especially, you know, taking them to the mall to meet Santa, or, you know, letting them window shop and stuff like that, that can be fun. But you know, I'm a grown-ass man, Wai Ting. I don't need to sit on nobody's lap. I know exactly what I'm going to buy people for Christmas, so I can do that from the comfort of my own home.
And I think you're the smarter person for it, because that leaves you plenty of extra time to watch professional wrestling,
yes,
such as tonight. So thank you from all of us, all of the listeners. I'm sure thanking you very much, Nate, for I guess drawing the wonderful 3-hour-long straw that you know made you willingly sacrifice your evening for tonight. So thank you for that. We will get to the review very quickly, and maybe along with a little bit of news, Nate, if you don't mind giving us some of your takes on the things that are going on right now. But first, some housekeeping here. The lineup this week on the Post Wrestling Office Post Wrestling Cafe is stacked. So, of course, like I mentioned, John comes back tomorrow. We are reunited for our latest edition of Rewind Away, talking about ECW on TNN from December 31st, 1999. This is a treat for everybody because it is only 45 minutes and it is stacked itself, featuring a main event of Mike Awesome taking on Masato Tanaka, Raven versus Mikey Whipwreck, and Tajiri versus Super Crazy. So it feels like a real quintessential ECW in its prime type of show that John and I will be discussing. And that is, of course, the choice of Robert Brockie, the Postmaster himself. So thank you, Postmaster, for choosing a 45-minute show for all of us.
I love that selection, man, because like ECW on TNN, I had such high hopes for that when it came out back in the day, and how they tried to team it up with Roller Jam as if that was the perfect lead-in, like roller derby going into wrestling. But yeah, it didn't work. So R.I.P. ECW on TNN.
Wednesday, we have the return of Rewind to Dynamite, and up next, of course, as usual, Thursday is our cafe hangout discussing, I would say, an incredibly tight race in the ratings war on Wednesday nights. Friday, there's a very special edition of the British Wrestling Experience where Jamesy of the British Wrestling Experience actually took 2 hours to conduct this extensive interview with David Starr. We put out a little teaser today on our Instagram and our Twitter. And you're going to, hear all about David Starr's year. I would say a banner year for him in his career, having what many people are considering the match of the year of 2019 against Jordan Devlin from OTT's 5th anniversary show. So hear him talk about that, hear him talk about his feud against Walter, stepping on the NXT UK title. Just one, I would say one of the more talked about, if not the most talked about indie star right now, who is truly an indie star, I would say. So listen to that. Subscribe to the British Wrestling Experience wherever you download your podcast. Friday evening, it's a special edition of Rewind to SmackDown on our Patreon, where I'll be going through the show much like this, while John will be going through ROH's Final Battle pay-per-view. And a special note on that, ROH has actually offered its first hour of that pay-per-view for free at 7 p.m. on Facebook, Fight TV, and cable providers. So I think, Nate, probably taking advantage of SmackDown's audience at 8 o'clock. So if you're sitting down a little bit early, maybe you'd want to give Final Battle, or at least the first hour of Final Battle, a bit of a shot.
Yeah, I think that's actually a smart maneuver. And, I get that ROH hadn't had the most pleasant buzz around them lately, but I think that's a smart move.
It's a show where I think, a lot of, there's, I don't even know. I would say like it's important to like have them, for them to have a really strong effort because there's a lot of pressure on them, but I don't even know how much pressure there is on them because I don't know how many people are talking about this show. But nonetheless, if they had a really strong showing, I think, a bad show would certainly not be good for them right now. Saturday, John is back with Phil Chertok doing the UFC 245 post show. Sunday, we got WH Park with special guest Sarah Flan on his latest edition of Thunderstruck, talking about Jushin Liger versus Tyler Breeze from NXT TakeOver in 2015. Sunday night, finally, to end this week, John Pollock, myself, and special guest Mike Murray will be back for our TLC post show, where we will talk about not just TLC, but also NWA's Into the Fire pay-per-view from Saturday night. So that'll be available for free on this feed after the fact. But if you want to tune in live, Double Ice Cap and Espresso patrons can tune in at postwrestlingcafe.com. So a packed week here at Post Wrestling with a number of our favorite friends appearing throughout the whole week. So thank you, Nate. Starting with you.
That's what the holidays are for, Wai. Family coming back together.
Yeah, it is so much so. And you know what? I would say the holidays are also for submitting your entries for our annual Christmas jingle contest. Of course, this is something we do every year for our Christmas show that we drop on December 24th. And the entries are being accepted right now at forum.postwrestling.com. And Nate, I know you are friends with this gentleman, but do you know if we might be getting an entry from Braxton Witherspoon in the Smart Marks this year?
I haven't talked to Braxton in a while. Actually, it might have been since last Christmas, but I think there's a good chance that the Smart Marks might drop another Christmas classic this year, because much like Mannheim Steamroller or the Trans-Siberian Orchestra, like they only work once a year. And so there's a good chance we might get a track from the Smart Marks. But what I'm waiting for, Wai Ting, is I need Elmo to come back strong this year.
Elmo, yeah. I mean, that's a pretty once in a year infrequent. Yeah, like I don't know. I wonder if we scared Elmo away last year. or if he scared us away permanently. I don't know. I wonder how far that gentleman can go. Like, can you imagine, like, whoever it is that does the Elmo thing for us? Like, this is what Christmas is starting to represent to this person. You know, his family's like, you know, hey, like, what are you doing for the holidays? Probably gonna make another Christmas jingle parody in the voice of Elmo for this wrestling podcast.
He goes all Joaquin Phoenix at the dinner table. Call me Elmo.
Well, we're all grateful for it. I hope to hear something from Elmo again this year, and something from all of you, because we are taking deadlines. We're taking entries until the deadline of Saturday, December the 21st. So next Saturday, everybody. So get your entries in forum.postwrestling.com. Do you want to get into some news there, Nate?
Yeah, let's talk about some news, Wai.
I would say perhaps, you know, the most talked about news item of the day is the WWE's announcement of the first inductees into their 2020 Hall of Fame. And they are starting with, as first reported by, I believe this was People Magazine, who got the exclusive, David Bautista is the first entrant. And then quickly afterwards, I believe ESPN, Mark Raimondi, reported that the NWO being represented by Hulk Hogan, Kevin Nash, Scott Hall, and Sean Waltman are also being inducted into the Hall of Fame. Your thoughts on these inductees?
First of all, I just love, like, the selection process for what story we're going to give to what outlet. But I think Batista's, like, obviously a no-brainer, like, not only for what he did in the company, but the star that he's become since, you know, leaving the company with the Guardians of the Galaxy movies and Stuber and
Stuber especially, yeah.
Especially Stuber. And
that's why he's getting in.
Isn't he going to be in the new Suicide Squad as well?
I believe so. I mean, who knows? I'm not sure. I mean, I know Cena's in it. I forget. Yeah.
I wonder though if the tweet interaction between him and Dana Brooke is what put him over the top, though, because that was a masterpiece by Big Dave.
Yes. Yes.
The NWO though is interesting to me though, Wai, because yes, obviously the group deserves it, but the selection of the people involved and the fact that Eric Bischoff is not involved with that group, it makes me scratch my head a little bit.
Well, it makes you wonder. I mean, this is my next question: who you think will be inducting everybody? Because Batista has publicly tweeted that he would like Fit Finlay to induct him.
Ooh.
And you know, on that note, I don't really see anybody better than Eric Bischoff to do the same for the NWO if he's not going to be inducted himself.
I can certainly see that, and I think, you know, Bischoff having left on good terms from all we've heard, Wai, it would work and it'd be a fit, and I'm sure Eric would give a great speech introducing the group. But I think it would be a greater honor for him to get inducted with the group because he was so important, you know, for the formation of the NWO. You know, he didn't come up with the concept, but he was the one that stole the concept. So you should get a man credit for stealing the concept. The other thing with this, though, Wai, is, and I'm sure, you know, other fans may or may not have the same thoughts as I do on this, but I get honoring the NWO. I'm just not at a place where I'm down to give Terry Bollea any more prestige or any more accolades right now.
I totally agree, and I totally understand. I mean, it's hard to believe, but it's like only been a year since he made his return at that Crown Jewel show, and in that time, I mean, I feel like they've really kind of, you know, almost like it was almost like magic. Where, like, I remember my reaction to seeing Hulk Hogan back on that show, and it was so, like, it was really negative on my part, but like a year in, I have to admit, like, it almost feels normal. Like, they've normalized his return for sure, to the point now where I think, you know, him being announced for this induction ceremony for the NWO, nobody, of course, really bats an eye. It's just, you know, kind of common insurance. He's back.
Yeah, and from the company standpoint, I get it, because part of the Hall of Fame is about selling tickets and getting people to watch on the network. So I get it, but yeah, I'm happy for, you know, guys like Waltman that he's getting some shine. But yeah, I could do without the Hulk Hogan love.
I definitely, like, yeah, coming out of this is like, I think a lot of people were perplexed why Waltman was included, but I'm with you. Like, the dude just seems like such a cool dude that induct the man twice. Like, I don't have a huge issue with it. So that's the Hall of Fame, everybody. That takes place on the Thursday of WrestleMania weekend this year. So that's the night before SmackDown. New Japan Pro Wrestling has announced its full lineup for both nights of Wrestle Kingdom. How much are you keeping up with New Japan these days, Nate?
Not a lot, Way. Like I think the last time I really was invested in New Japan, and it's not because the product hadn't been good. It's just, due to there's only so much wrestling one human being can watch in a week. But I think, the G1 was probably the last time I was really paying attention to New Japan.
I wouldn't say that you're even like alone in that. Like, where I even personally feel myself that I think, what's going on this side of the world between NXT and AEW has just taken so much precedence over what New Japan has been offering for the second half of its year. So John and I, of course, recorded a bonus World Tag League post show last night on our Patreon. So if you want to get a little bit more caught up before Wrestle Kingdom, you can listen to that. But early Monday morning, New Japan announced its full lineups for Wrestle Kingdom, and on night one, of course, you have the IWGP Heavyweight Championship match between Kazuchika Okada versus Kota Ibushi, the IWGP IC title match between Jay White versus Naito. On night two, the two winners of those matches will meet to determine the first double champion in New Japan Pro Wrestling history. And then the losers will meet as well to, just say, I won something that weekend. Also on that first night, we got Will Ospreay versus Hiromu Takahashi. And coming off of World Tag League, of course, we have Lance Archer defending the U.S. Heavyweight Championship against Jon Moxley in a Texas death match. That also is on night one. Rounding out the title matches in night one are the IWGP Heavyweight Tag Team Championship as the Guerrillas of Destiny defend against FinJuice, the winners of the World Tag League. And then that's also kind of followed up with a number of like 8-man tags between Chaos, Bullet Club, and then also LIJ and Suzuki Gun. Nothing really new to report there. The only other thing that is worth mentioning on the card, of course, is the Jushin Liger retirement match. And that first night features Tiger Mask, Great Sasuke, Tatsumi Fujinami, and Jushin Thunder Liger taking on Ryusuke Taguchi, Tatsuhiro Takaiwa, Shinjiro Otani, and Naoki Sano. Night two, of course, as we mentioned, the championship tournament. We also have Hiroshi Tanahashi versus Chris Jericho. For the Never Openweight Championship, we have Kenta defending it against Hiroki Goto. And we also have an extra challenge here where the winner of Lance Archer and Jon Moxley's Texas Death Match will be defending the U.S. Heavyweight Championship against Juice Robinson. Also, for the Rev Pro British Heavyweight Championship, Zack Sabre Jr. defends against Sonata. For the IWGP Junior Heavyweight Tag Team Championship, it's Al Fantasmo and Taiji Ishimori defending against Roppongi 3K. And rounding out that card, the opening match of this particular card is Jushin Thunder Liger's final match ever. Jushin Thunder Liger teams with Naoki Sano, a longtime rival, against the former Dragon Lee, now known as Ryu Lee, and Hiromu Takahashi. So, I'm a little disappointed that we're not going to get a singles match for Liger's last match, but it's a great way to showcase Dragon Lee. Obviously, a great way to showcase Hiromu Takahashi. Either way, I imagine it to be a pretty sentimental and emotional moment. Might not be sort of. I wonder if it says anything about maybe Liger's confidence in his abilities to deliver like that great singles match. If all his matches, like pretty much in this last run, are all multi-man matches. Either way, it should be a very emotional affair.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a great night or two great nights. And yeah, like Liger could literally go out their way and just put on a chin lock for 10 minutes, and people would just be so appreciative of him.
Will be crying.
Yeah,
like I'll be sitting next to WH. I'll have the tissues ready.
Yeah, I was gonna say, somebody please make sure WH is cared for, because that is going to be a very emotional moment. And so yeah, I think. Like I think the match I'm most excited for probably is Okada Ibushi, but in terms of what is probably going to hit me the hardest, it's going to be that last Liger match.
Remains to be seen. Certainly, how this like 2-card format works out, because we're getting plenty of title matches both nights, but I think also. I don't even really want to say filler matches, because nothing really feels like it's filler. But at the same time, some of these 8-man tags don't necessarily feel like they are worthy of a Wrestle Kingdom spot.
Yeah, I was going to ask you that way. Like, do you think, obviously, they've got a plan in place here, but do you think they'd be better served kind of taking the 4 or 5 best matches from each card and making it on one show?
Honestly, it remains to be seen. My what I'm also curious about is like how long these shows are. Whether or not the time of the shows get cut down, because they can be very much marathons. Right now, we're looking at about 8 matches per show. I believe it is 8, if I'm doing my math properly. So, it could be perhaps more manageable. It's something I think we'll talk about certainly after the first night, or even first both nights. They also announced their full lineups for all their Korakuen Hall shows leading up to the Tokyo Dome events, and this of course features the return of Hiromu Takahashi in ring, where he'll be teaming up with Bushi on the first night against the Birds of Prey. All tag team matches pretty much with Hiromu, and also Jushin Thunder Liger's final matches at Korakuen Hall. So you can tune in for all of that at New Japan World. Some other notes. New Japan also announced their first U.S. tour of 2020, operating under, of course, New Japan of USA. They'll be going to Tampa, Nashville, Raleigh, Miami, and Atlanta from January 24th to February 1st. So
I like that loop. Like, Raleigh is certainly within driving distance. So yeah, shout out to New Japan for representing the South.
They have not announced the cards or lineups or who's going to be on these shows yet. And at this point, who knows when you might hear about that. Definitely at least after Wrestle Kingdom. But that's the first, I think, loop under the New Japan of USA banner. Kris Statlander and Big Swole have officially signed to AEW. 2 women that they've been featuring. Well, Kris Statlander, of course, featured heavily on this last week's edition of Dynamite, and Big Swole making a number of appearances on Dark recently. Any thoughts on either of those signings, Nate?
I think those are 2 good signings for the AEW women's division, a division which, by all kind of objective accounts, I think you could say, Wai, has been one of the less strong parts of the show. But I think, adding Statlander and adding Swole is a great addition. I also think, like, one of the things that I wish they would do, and I don't know if it's, because of contracts or people can't come to an agreement or things of that nature, but I wish we would see more veterans come in for a bit, like we saw with Jazz and Mercedes Martinez at that Battle Royal, because I think you got some good talent in the AEW's women's division, but a lot of it is green. And I think, like, outside of Emi Sakura and Awesome Kong, most of these girls are fairly young, and Rio too, I guess, but most of them are fairly young, fairly new. And I think having people like Jazz or Mercedes Martinez or Lufisto could add some depth, and also, help those younger girls get up to speed.
Like Mercedes Martinez was like somebody that they featured prominently in that Battle Royal. Haven't heard anything about her being a part of AEW since then. I totally understand what you're saying. Some releases over the weekend, Nate. I already heard you and Chris from LA talk about some, and Rich Fan talk about some of this on your latest edition of the Nubian Wrestling Advocates on the Kings of Sport Patreon, which has become a must listen every single month. But actually, you didn't get to talk about this. I heard you guys talk about ACH. But in addition to ACH over the weekend, WWE, of course, released Luke Harper, Sin Cara, and the Ascension. And today, there were lots of tweets of support from WWE wrestlers, in particular towards the Ascension and Luke Harper. Dave Meltzer has confirmed that there are no compete clauses for all of these wrestlers for the next 90 days. So essentially, if the date was yesterday that they were released, they will be free to sign March 8th elsewhere. So any thoughts on these releases, Nate?
I think that when these releases first came out, a lot of what you saw on Twitter and social media was, such and such should go to AEW, such and such should show up, on Dynamite. And I think that's something, as I know it's tempting for fans to kind of do these what if scenarios, but I think we need to kind of pump our brakes on that, because AEW to me is not, and they should not be in the business of just signing everybody that gets released from the WWE. I think, the Ascension did as best as they could given the gimmicks they were given on the main roster, or the angles they were given on the main roster. And I was a big fan of Luke Harper. It just never seemed to work out, either due to booking or injuries or a combination of both. But I would say, like, if you're an AEW fan and you're looking at these guys like, yeah, that's what's going to turn things around, I think that's the wrong mentality, because yes, adding a Luke Harper can add some variety to your show, add some depth to your show, but you shouldn't get into that TNA trap, Wade, thinking back to the Review and Impact days of just signing every single WWE dude when the no compete comes up.
I totally agree with you. I think, and I feel like WWE themselves must realize that, where maybe several months ago the story might have been different, but I think seeing what AEW's roster currently looks like, and the fact that I think they still have a number of talents that need to get onto TV to be made ahead of potential signings like a Luke Harper or the Ascension. I just don't necessarily see them posing that big of a threat, I suppose, to WWE, if that is, was any concern several months ago. Where do you see these talents lining up, if not AEW?
Honestly, I think the NWA would be great for the Ascension, as they come in, and because the NWA kind of fits what they wanted the gimmick to be on WWE TV as this throwback to the Road Warriors, the Demolition. I think they could fit. Luke Harper is another person I could see in AEW. Maybe even in Impact. Like, I think he could add some spice to the Impact roster. But yeah, I think those would be better landing spots for them than AEW, in my opinion, because you're right, Way. Like, we still haven't really gotten Shawn Spears to the place where he needs to be. We still haven't really given Sonny Kiss his fair shake on Dynamite yet. So there's other guys that need to be taken care of before you bring in these WWE dudes.
So those are the stories today. Postwrestling.com is where you can find all of that information as we get into Raw, WWE Raw, the divorce edition. And that's how it starts off. Lana, Rusev, divorce. Jerry Lawler's in the ring. He's here to watch over the proceedings, because who knows more about divorces on that roster than Jerry Lawler? So Lana and Rusev both come out, and Rusev comes out wearing this Donald Duck t-shirt. He's all smiles. It's as if he's on vacation and this is the happiest day of his life. There's a moment here where they cut to Samoa Joe, who has to lend some analysis to this thing, which I just found really unintentionally funny.
So,
Lana says,
"Is it just me where you're like, has Samoa Joe become like low-key one of the better WWE announcers?"
Well, it's only been like, what, 2-3 weeks, and I would say low-key, sure, yes, he might be. Was there something that stood out about his commentary for this particular segment?
I just feel like Joe is in on the joke, but at the same time, the character of Samoa Joe is so nonplussed and so kind of over this stuff that it's a nice kind of dichotomy to the way he announces. Like, he cares about what he's watching, but at the same time, he's not too pressed by it.
So Lana says, despite whatever happened between them, she used to love Rusev, and that Rusev will never find anybody like her who loves him like she does. Lana blames the WWE Universe for ruining their marriage, and then Lana just goes on to have this huge tantrum in the ring, cuts a promo on the audience. They start arguing about who should be signing the contract first, because they each want to go first. Then they argue about who gets to keep their puppy. And this was just fucking unbearable. How did you how were you doing up until this point, Nate?
Oh, here's the thing, Wai Ting. I think I need to be completely honest with the listeners, because my attention was divided tonight. Because for those that know, like, I'm big into the superhero stuff, and tonight on the CW was night 2 of Crisis on Infinite Earths.
Oh, should we be breaking that down? Should we switch to the podcast right about now?
I think there was a lot better storytelling on the CW, but so I'm flipping back and forth, and so I'm like, okay, they're starting with the divorce. Let's see what's going on with the divorce, and I don't fault Rusev or Lana in their performance, but this whole storyline, like, I get it. I get that it's just kind of cheesy, throwaway fun, but it hadn't worked for me since they started the angle with Lana and Lashley. And so I'm sitting here watching this the whole time, Way, and in the back of my mind, I'm like, damn, Tom Weller from Smallville might be on TV right now. Should I switch? And I'm like, no, I have to do my duty for the postmarks. I will stick this out to the bitter end. And I think the biggest thing for me is why did we need to go through all of this to get to the match? It felt like, yes, I get it. I get the divorce angle, but if the ultimate goal of this is to build towards Rusev and Lashley, I don't know if this angle certainly didn't help Lashley. I think Rusev might have got something out of this, but they could have had something better for these two.
So I guess my question, Dave, is Tom Welling, Brandon Routh, who else?
Oh, Kevin Conroy was on tonight.
Wow.
The voice of Batman. Black Lightning was in the crossover. It was a big deal. Way.
That sounds amazing. All right, so Lana signs this thing. Rusev doesn't, says he needs something else from her. And Lana asks, what is it? Sex again? And they list all the places they've had sex. Lana says he's sick. Rusev is sick like the people in this arena. And Rusev finally reveals that in order to sign, he wants a match with Lashley. So Lashley comes out and says after this divorce, he intends to ask Lana to marry him. And then Rusev said, she's all yours. She's just bad. He just wants to live happily. So Rusev signs. And then this is when Bobby Lashley attacks, slams his head on the table, but Rusev fights back and belly-to-belly suplexes Lashley through this table, featuring some, in the background, very over-the-top facial expressions from Lana selling it all. So you would assume tables match coming off of this.
Yes.
I haven't seen it officially announced yet, but I mean, that is, I think, the very clear intention here. This segment, like, it made me feel funny inside. Like I was just like, forced to watch a video I really didn't want to see. But like, Nate, all that said, everything that you said earlier, I don't disagree with, but this crowd reacts big for all this stuff.
Yeah.
Like Rusev is a far bigger babyface now than he was before. And while these segments, I've certainly received great criticism from its hardcore online fan base, from a fan base like ours, from a podcast like ours, live, I'm really sad to admit that these continue to work really well.
And it's weird because I get that the audience going to the live show is different. In some ways, much different than the audience sitting at home watching Raw. But I don't get how these opinions can be so vastly different. Another thing that might have affected my viewing of this segment, Way, was a tweet that you retweeted over the weekend.
Yes.
I forget the woman's name that wrote the tweet, and I couldn't help but think she was bringing up kind of the underlying misogyny in this angle, and I couldn't get that out of my mind.
Yeah,
especially when Lana was bringing up the sex part. So I think that may have tempered whatever enjoyment I could have gotten out of this segment.
It was a tweet from Kate_McDonald, MacDonald, who basically, I think, enlightened myself and, anybody who perhaps read this thing about how one of the details of how this angle started was that when it came time for Lana to finally explain why she left Lashley, her reasoning was that to leave Rusev. Her reasoning was that Rusev constantly demanded sex. And I think, to like a longtime wrestling fan, male wrestling fan who might have listened to that, like, I didn't think it was anything. I thought it was like, oh, okay, another like corny, like stupid, wrestling reason. Of course, the guy really wanted to have sex, and the audience cheered at the mentions of that. But like the way Kate kind of like put it into context was that, like, I mean, it was conditioning your audience to feel like a woman should be vilified for, like a woman denying sex to her husband is something to be vilified. Whereas, a husband demanding sex, like, in fact, there was a portion of that segment where Rusev said, "Can you blame me?" And in fact, I found it really interesting about how, because I went back afterwards to rewatch the segment online, and WWE, for whatever reason, what could be due to time or could be for another reason, they edited that particular comment out.
Interesting.
So, I mean, it kind of made me rethink about the whole thing. Obviously, like, it's a conversation that, like, I personally don't even feel ready to have in professional wrestling, because I think the bar is set so low that, like the topic of like, consent, or like I think the interpretation of something that might, go against the idea of consent is not even something I feel like wrestling is ready to have, much less like me being able to present it in an accurate way. So I appreciate people like Kate, bringing their perspective, and as always, we welcome our audience's perspectives on things that we might not see.
Yeah, I was like you said, I hadn't even thought of it, and I like to think of myself way as somebody that can kind of see all different sides when I watch my wrestling. But yeah, that was a blind spot for me, and so I'm glad that she brought it up. And yeah, it didn't help my enjoyment of this segment. The other thing that didn't help Way is I know it's a nice check, to be working up there with Vince, but have they done anything meaningful with Bobby Lashley since he came back?
Well, this would be it.
Yeah, I think this might be the best because he did the Sami Zayn stuff with the sisters. He did the deal with Leo Rush where he was flexing his ass at the crowd every week. So this might be the highlight of the Bobby Lashley return.
Yeah, up until this point. Alrighty, we'll have to pick this conversation back up some other time, Nate. Kevin Owens is in the back with Charlie, and Charlie asks Owens if he's figured out why AOP attacked him last week, and Owens says it's because Rollins is their leader, and he's sure of it. He's sure that Rollins got AOP to attack him because he was the only person who spoke up against Rollins in that backstage town hall thing or town hall deal. And then Owens reveals that he got away last week after being abducted from AOP. Now he's going to look for them for revenge. So Owens runs into Rey Mysterio, who says his homie has Owens back, and he refers to his lead pipe as the homie who he lends to Kevin Owens in his search against AOP. Matt Hardy is about to face Drew McIntyre, and as Drew comes out, he starts cutting a promo on Matt, telling the audience that Matt just had his third kid last week with his wife Rebecca, but says the kid is probably cross-eyed. Drew says in ring, Matt Hardy has been very successful, but outside of the ring, he's made some bad decisions. So he's not sure if Matt should be reproducing. Ouch. Damn. That's mean. Really mean words from Drew, but it did set the match off to a really hot start, putting the crowd behind Matt Hardy. So we get the match. Hardy's in full control until he eats a future shock DDT from Drew. And then it's just a quick Claymore kick for the quick victory in a very brief match. Not much here as far as the match goes, but it was a really nasty promo from Drew that gave the crowd a lot of support for Hardy.
Yeah, I like this. Like, I think one of the better things that they've been doing on Raw lately, Way, is kind of these glorified squash matches where you get somebody the level of a Matt Hardy or the level of a Buddy Murphy or the level of a Sin Cara, like somebody that has a name and that we know that's not just some random jobber, and you give the person that you really want to put over a strong win over them. And so I like it. I think Drew has a ton of potential. I just don't know where his lane is right now with Seth as your top heel.
It's I think they're doing a good job with him, whatever their intent is. I mean, clearly, I think right now they just want to make him into a focused, priority on Raw, and it was a nasty promo here that gave him a strong TV win as well. I guess my other question is, do you think that this jobber role is all there is for Matt Hardy, or do you feel like there's something in the works for him? Because this nostalgic like Team Extreme Matt Hardy coming up from out of nowhere seems really unusual. Like it almost feels like it is meant to lead up to some sort of transformation. Do you think it's that, or do you think it's just this?
I wish it was more than this Way, but I think it might be just this. And it's crazy. Like the WWE can't get out of their own way sometimes, because in a world where we now have this Bray Wyatt Fiend character, it seems like the perfect time for them to have had some kind of incorporation with Broken Matt Hardy. Like he fits to me in that Bray Wyatt world, but we've got him over here, cosplaying as his younger self. He's cosplaying as Earth One Matt Hardy, and I think that might be the position he's stuck in for a while.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost too bad because I feel like that ship's kind of sailed where they tried and
Yeah.
they didn't really kind of figure it out. It makes you wonder like from what I hear, Bray Wyatt has a great deal of autonomy in deciding creatively what he wants to do, and I think seeing some of the results of like those videos with like the Muscle Man dance, like I don't know how much like Vince
Mm.
is stepping into all that. That feels like it's just really coming from one dude. So, if Matt Hardy for his broken Ultimate Deletion, whatever stuff they wanted to do, if he had that same level of autonomy, and maybe he did, I don't even really know how much like what exactly happened there, but
Yeah.
it did not land as much as obviously, his TNA run did. So we'll see if
No.
this is it. We'll
And
see
like
if this is it.
I think like if he did have the level of autonomy, like then he didn't execute it in a way that was effective and resonated with the audience. But if they limited him just because the idea came from outside instead of from in-house like it did with Bray Wyatt, like that's short-sighted. Like the objective should be to put out the best show possible, regardless of where the idea comes from.
Charlotte and Becky are backstage. They don't like each other, of course, but Charlotte needs Becky's help against the Kabuki Warriors, and Charlotte reminds Becky that she has problems with them as well. Becky says she would rather face them 2-on-1 than to team with Charlotte, and Charlotte says, "Good luck with that." Owens is in the back with his pipe. He runs into Mojo Rawley and asks if he's seen AOP. And Mojo is purposely being a dick, misdirecting Owens, saying he's there. He's like they went this way, and then saying they went the other way. So Owens slaps him hard, really hard. And Owens says, "Well, you just went that way," pointing down. Man, I thought Owens was such a dick here. Like, I mean, yes, Raleigh was a dick, but come on, like you don't retaliate with violence just like that.
I think if it was anybody else other than Mojo, I would agree with you, Way. But why is Mojo Rawley here at Raw? Like, what was Mojo Rawley planning to do, making this trip here?
Well, I don't know if he's got a job at Superstar or main event. Maybe he's helping with the catering. Maybe he's moving like the crates around.
Maybe he thought he could get a spot on the update desk that we'll talk about later.
Maybe he's doing the lighting or the camera for it. Maybe. So anyway, Owens, I will say, they continue to treat him as like a bit of a badass, who
Yeah.
really doesn't take shit. Better than being like the popcorn eater or whatever he was doing before. The Viking Raiders come out. They issue an open challenge to any team, and out come the Street Profits. And we have a match after a commercial break. Really hot start from the Street Profits. They're going very fast, catching the Raiders off guard. A lot of really impressive dives from Montez Ford. Sky High and a Frog Splash are broken up by Ivar at 2. Ivar does his cartwheel spot, but Ford mirrors him, so it's like two guys doing cartwheels that actually look pretty cool. The Raiders gain the advantage and slowed things down very briefly. Get a hot tag to Dawkins as he delivers an impressive suplex to Ivar. But the Raiders are too much, and then we get a big knee from Eric, and then the Viking experience to Ford gives the Viking Raiders the win. It was, I would say, a really entertaining few minutes of a match here.
Yeah, I was really surprised by this match. I didn't know that they'd have this good chemistry in the ring. And it ended up being, even though it was short, it ended up being probably one of my favorite segments on Raw tonight. I loved that they gave the Street Profits a little bit at the beginning, but then the brute strength of the Viking Raiders took over. And I love like the replay when they showed Ford taking the Viking experience. Just he was going all out to make that move look good. So I like that, and I like the little show of respect after the match.
I really like the psychology in this match of just like, the smaller team trying to swarm their opponents with speed. I thought they managed that really well. And do you think that what do you think the Street Profits, what is their role on Raw and in this tag team division?
Well, we saw them get a new role tonight, Way.
True. Yes.
And I
mean, is that it?
I don't know how I feel about it. Obviously, they're a talented team, but I think that maybe the people in charge are so enamored with the guy's charisma, especially Montez Ford, that they think they're better served doing comedy segments than actually wrestling. And I hope that they don't get kind of pigeonholed into that role. Because as we saw, even in this little short match, like they can be really good in the ring.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I will say I don't think their loss here like really hurts them at all. Number one,
No.
because they are so charismatic, but also I kind of sense them as more of like a team that like, that where like championship wins don't necessarily just come easy to them, and that they have to continually struggle to like they did here in this match wonderfully. Where it was almost like they were the clear underdogs and they had to work really hard and be really smart in order to try to beat the Viking Raiders. So I think for me, like at least I just have more interest in seeing them their next challenge than this loss really affecting my interest.
Yeah, and I think like the moment where they actually do pull the trigger, who knows, maybe it's 6 months from now, maybe it's a year from now. Whenever they do pull the trigger and put the belts on them, it should be a big moment.
Now, this segment kind of awkwardly transitions into the next, as as you mentioned, both teams have a show of respect with one another, and then Seth Rollins' music hits, and he interrupts, and he basically grabs the mic, says he has something to take care of, invites both teams to stay, but they each just leave. And we've definitely been noticing on Raw how their transitions to commercial breaks have kind of like seen segments that would maybe traditionally be separate kind of bleed from one over to the other. I think it works relatively well as like cliffhangers here. Certainly by the end of it, I guess you can debate like how much like sense it makes, but I think it's something that they're doing well to keep the pace of the show going pretty quickly. Rollins says he has unfinished business with AOP and wants to fight them right now. Instead, Kevin Owens and his pipe show up. Owens says he knows AOP aren't here because he hasn't found them, and he accuses Seth of putting on a show right now because he knows he's in charge of AOP. Rollins continues to deny any involvement, and on the Tron, AOP are shown to arrive in their black van as Rollins continues to deny any association and decides to prove his point by leaving the arena. AOP are seen on screen as they speak to Owens in their native language, and at this point, Sami Zayn from SmackDown shows up, and joining him is Mojo Rawley. Zayn says while he's a SmackDown guy, he has applied for a Raw managerial license, and I mean, it appears this could be a bit of a permanent thing between Sami Zayn and Mojo Rawley. He says while we all know he's not a manager, Sami Zayn says, he's a liberator who sets people free, and says Owens is a prisoner in his own head. Zayn says Owens was out of line for slapping Mojo in the face earlier and tells Owens to apologize. Mojo continues to antagonize Owens and says he's only tough with the steel pipe in his hands. So Owens throws the pipe into Mojo's hands and hits him with the stunner, and he continues to beat the shit out of Mojo Rawley with a pipe. What do you think of the segment and Kevin Owens?
I thought this was a pretty solid segment. The Sami Zayn stuff had me scratching my head a bit though, Way. Because, like, first of all, I didn't know we were doing this. You can apply for managers' licenses on multiple shows. The other thing, though, if you can do that, why would you sign Mojo Rawley? Like, that seems like a bad business move. Like, okay, going back to the Crisis Wave, like the Monitor. It's a big crisis in the universe. So he's picking Superman and Supergirl and the Flash and Black Lightning and Green Arrow. He's getting the best of the best. Batwoman. Mojo, Sami Zayn over here could pick anybody on this roster to manage, and he's picking Mojo Rawley, who, to my count, and granted, I haven't been watching Raw as diligently as you and John over the past few months, but I haven't seen a Mojo Rawley match on Raw in what feels like forever.
I can't recall a match, but I mean, I think he's had a pretty nice sprint for like the 24/7 championship once in a while. I think that's
he likes his Sammy likes Mojo's running form. He's like, I could turn that into a champion.
The thing is, okay, if you're Sami Zayn, like I don't know if you really like have a chance of getting, some of the big players. Like his track record's not that great himself.
No.
With Shinsuke Nakamura and Cesaro. So I feel like Sami Zayn pretty much kind of has to start with like anybody who would take him at the moment. And I'm guessing Mojo Rawley was like the only person to like, give him the time of day. I continue to be impressed at the way that they're portraying Owens here. Like he's kind of slightly paranoid, but also like very quick-witted, but just a badass who always stands tall at the end of these segments. So, I also found it interesting about how, like, as far as like the Seth heel turn goes, they were really playing this pretty straight, as if like Seth seemed to be telling the truth, and that Owens is just you're led to believe that he's just simply being paranoid. And of course, this will all reveal itself by the end of the show.
It's almost like in TNA when they were trying to play like Sting kept talking about they, which eventually turned into Immortal, but nobody would believe him. But obviously TNA being what it was didn't do it nearly as effective as the WWE's doing with Owens.
Or I mean, Sting with the NWO.
Yeah, that's a good point too.
Like where of course that turned out with him actually not being part of the NWO, but like this was like that, I think, straight up of a babyface portrayal with Rollins here. We go to Aleister Black versus Akira Tozawa up next, but first we have a quick promo in the back from Buddy Murphy, who says he's got one thing to say, Nate. He's better than Aleister Black, and he's going to prove it in their match on Sunday. I mean, it really was about as one note as that. I would say this was about as plain of a wrestling promo as you can get. I've got one thing to say. I'm better than my opponent, and I'm going to prove it at our scheduled match on Sunday. The match itself goes with Joe. I thought really took a bit of a lead role here on commentary, talking about Aleister Black's striking techniques.
Yeah.
Early on, a bit of a stalemate here with Tozawa trying to figure out Aleister Black's style. Later, Tozawa delivers his signature suicide dive, and Aleister Black just meets it with a big jumping knee on the floor. Back in the ring, Tozawa takes a second to come to. As he stands up, he immediately eats a black mass to give Black the win. The slow-mo replays on this one, but between the jumping knee and the black mass, I thought looked really good. I thought those two spots alone made this entire segment a pretty successful showcase for Aleister.
Yeah, I agree. Again, this is what I was talking about earlier, kind of those name squash matches. And Tozawa, to his credit, like he's been doing some really good work making guys look good. Like Black this week, I think he's had a couple matches with Andrade that have made Andrade look really strong. So yeah, like everybody can't be a star, but you got to give credit to somebody like Akira Tozawa, who has all the talent in the world, but is put in this position to make other guys look good, and he does it every week.
I think like somebody should establish some jobber rankings of like just the best jobbers, and I certainly would put Tozawa up there. I'm trying to think who else kind of fits. I mean, I guess Matt Hardy is sort of in that spot right now, but yeah, like certainly to be commended. Charlie is backstage and introduces us to a highlight video for Humberto Carrillo before interviewing him. Charlie's about to ask a question, but Carrillo is interrupted before he can speak by Zelina and Andrade, who come in shouting at him in Spanish, very angry at something. And all of a sudden, Humberto and Andrade have an argument, and Zelina just looks surprised at the both of them saying, "Tonight?" So it appears to be, a creative way of allowing Humberto to set up a match without really actually having him to do like an awkward scripted English promo about like burning stuff, which is what they had him do the first time.
Also, I think one of the things we learned from this segment, as well as a segment later, is that Charlie really needs to invest in like a language learning program.
Oh, Duolingo, it's free.
Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah.
If she's going to be talking to all of these international superstars, like Charlie really needs to step up her game.
It's funny because she actually made that comment about how after the Kabuki Warriors like continued this, she said she realizes she needs to learn new languages. So anyway, so yeah, I thought all this worked as a pretty easy tease for what was to come. We also get a video for Liv Morgan promoting a Liv Morgan makeover coming very soon. So unfortunately, she's not a name I think anybody's really heard from for months, ever since they broke up the Riot Squad. And it seems like they're finally ready to give her something. And I would say videos are a good sign that they're at least somewhat invested.
And wasn't she on SmackDown like the last time we saw her?
That's a great question. I mean, you wouldn't know it either way. Because no, seriously, like I don't know if she's made a TV appearance doing anything.
Maybe she got drafted off screen.
She must have, yeah. We got Andrade versus Humberto Carrillo, and Humberto Carrillo's new music. John and I were split on this last week. Can you be the swing vote?
I think I like the old theme better.
I'm disappointed. I'm a big fan. I'm a big fan of this brand new theme. I like it a lot. We'll have to ask Braxton.
Yes, I mean it's not a bad theme. I think I need to get used to it. Maybe that's it, Way.
So, not much sense about what the storyline is, but the announcers kind of fill in the gaps for us. And there's sort of an insinuation that Andrade was jealous of Humberto giving attention to Zelina. Like, whatever. Like, sure, why not?
Because these relationship angles are ratings gold, Way.
Yes, of course. Whatever. So Humberto, it doesn't matter because this match I thought was awesome. Humberto fights back, high cross, springboard arm drag, big moonsault plancha to the floor. Big spots to get this crowd to react really big as we go to break. Some beautiful flips from Carrillo. So they go up. Carrillo gets caught in this double stomp for 2. Andrade's double knees are dodged. Carrillo is about to hit his Aztec press in the corner, but the execution was unfortunately quite off to the point where it was noticeable to everybody, including the announcers. He got a 2 count and a very flat reaction for it, which I would say perhaps just the lone stumbling block in the entire match for me. Andrade lands his back elbow for 2. Andrade lands his double knees finally, but Carrillo explodes out of the corner with a drop kick. At this point, Zelina is on the apron as Andrade inadvertently runs into her, knocking her off the apron, while Carrillo uses the distraction to apply a victory roll for the win. What'd you think of the match?
I like this match a lot. I was actually kind of surprised by the finish just because Andrade's been kept so strong lately. But then again, Carrillo is certainly somebody that they have plans for. I think watching this match, the only thing that was a negative is I just got really sad thinking about the fact that there's a cap, right? There's a limit to how far these guys can go when you have Brock Lesnar as your Universal Champion. And it's like, I get Brock being a star, but why when you have talent like Carrillo, when you have talent like Andrade or Drew McIntyre, why are we now still in 2019 in a position where Brock is the guy that's the top dude on the brand?
I almost consider Brock such a rare kind of special appearance type of thing that I almost don't even consider him as part of nobody's going to reach Brock Lesnar status for decades, right? So I almost don't even consider him part of the race. But Brock aside, what do you think is the ceiling for somebody like Andrade?
I think Andrade could be a world champion. I think he's got the talent. I think he's getting better as a character, and obviously Zelina is a great part of the package. And to what you're saying about Brock, I think Brock works as a special attraction. I just wish the belt wasn't tied up with him, because there's other stories you could really be telling right now with this roster, which is maybe as talented as we've ever seen in this company, but there's a prize they can't fight for because you got somebody else kind of holding it. When I would love to see Andrade get a shot at the title, because I think he's somebody that could really be a breakout star if they give him a chance. Same with Drew.
What about Humberto Carrillo?
I think Humberto is maybe a little more of a project. And that's not, disrespecting his ability. I just think, you mentioned it, Wade, kind of the language barrier. And we've seen how that can be an impediment, at least in the company's mind, to how we're going to present these guys as stars. Especially since he doesn't have somebody speaking for him. He doesn't have the luxury that Andrade has with Vega. So I think he can be like a guy in that U.S. title range. Maybe every now and then he'll get a shot at the top guy, but I have far less hope for him than I do for somebody like Andrade.
It's funny you mentioned that, because post-match here, Andrade and Zelina have a big argument, pointing fingers at each other, blaming the other for the loss. Mostly Andrade blaming Zelina for the loss. So they are potentially setting up a breakup between these two, or at the very least a tease. And I would be really sad if that was actually executed. But I mean, if that were to be the case, given this storyline, you would think it might be Zelina perhaps being paired with Carrillo.
Yeah, and that would be interesting, because I love her as a heel, and I don't know if she can work this angle as a face, and I don't know if Carrillo works for me as a heel either. So that dynamic would be interesting.
Mm-hmm. There's certainly not giving up on Carrillo, continuing to give him a lot of TV time. I would say doing a good job of finding ways to hide his weaknesses and accentuating his strengths, which is his incredible abilities in ring. So I think this was, to me, one of his most successful performances. I kind of like this better than any of his AJ Styles matches. I thought it was a strong win, and I mean the fact that he won, I think, was the biggest thing of that. The announcers put this over as the biggest win of his career as well, and this was also Andrade's first loss since arriving on Raw. Rey Mysterio is in the back. He cuts a promo saying that the U.S. title for him represents the journey he began when he lost his confidence and found again through the help of his son Dominic. He says he'll be the first to raise AJ's hand if he beats him, but he'll prove tonight that he's worthy of being the U.S. champion. So, sort of the same promo as Murphy, but I thought, anyway, your thoughts.
I was gonna say, it was a short and sweet promo, but Ray has just gotten so good on this run, and I hate to keep bringing it back to the Crisis, Wai Ting, but this season on Arrow, Stephen Amell has found out that he has a grown daughter, and it's made the character of Oliver Queen better, and I think Stephen Amell's acting has gotten better. So maybe this introduction of Dominic to the Rey Mysterio storyline just made Ray step up his game, because Kofi squash that happened in the middle of the Ray story aside, I've loved almost everything that they've done with Ray when it comes to Dominic and how he's out here trying to represent for his family and for his son in particular.
I agree. We go to Owens in the back, still looking for AOP before we get to our next match. Zack Ryder versus Buddy Murphy. And I guess Ryder firmly in these jobber rankings as well. Aleister Black cuts a promo this time as Murphy enters, and he's out of breath after his match. Says he hopes that this match is worth it for Buddy because something about making a mistake picking a fight with me. I don't know. John does these way better than I do, so I'm not even going to try. They're having a match on Sunday, everybody. So Ryder in this match lands the broski boot, but Murphy lands on the outside and attacks Hawkins for seemingly no reason. Ryder retaliates on the floor, but comes back into the ring and eats a knee and Murphy's Law. So this was also a very quick squash and really exactly all it needed to be, as this puts both Murphy and Black over strong as they head into TLC.
Yes, and again, I think one of the things that we've stumbled on this week, Way, is the jobber rankings. So to me, is Buddy Murphy at like the top of the jobber rankings or the bottom of the regular rankings? Because he feels like he's somewhere in there.
I would say Murphy probably was at the top, but I think he's graduated now from the jobber rankings into the bottom of the real rankings, I suppose.
It's like an English soccer club that gets called up from relegation.
Yeah. I suppose, though, you can argue that if he loses on Sunday to Aleister Black, I mean, this really could just be a glorified jobber match too, but no, I think they're giving Murphy at least a little bit. They're giving him promo time. They seem to have some interest in promoting him as an actual star beyond just somebody to be forgotten about, like Zack Ryder here. So, I'm not saying he can't return, but I think at the moment he's firmly out.
That should be the pre-show matches from now on, Way, for the pay-per-views.
Oh, yeah.
Like, forget like putting the tag title matches on or the cruiserweight title matches on. It should be like jobber matches so we can get the pecking order. Like, who's the best of the worst?
Here's the thing, though, because like to me, jobber rankings, you advance not because you get a win, but because of how good of a job you do as a jobber. That's how I rank them. Like,
so both guys are trying to lose the match,
make their opponents look incredible,
make their opponent look good.
Yeah.
I like it.
That's how you advance. Somebody can make a graphic. Kevin Owens is backstage, finds AOP's black van, and he just starts smashing it with this lead pipe. He breaks the windows. He opens up the back, and he discovers that there's somebody sitting back there. But before he can figure out who it is, AOP attack him from behind, and they smash the van's back door into his head. The person in the back is, for some reason, wearing a hood and slowly turns around like in a swivel chair in the back of a van. So I don't know what sort of van this was, why there was a swivel chair, but it was a wonderfully dramatic reveal because the person swivels around, takes the hood off, and it's Seth freaking Rollins.
I love this, Way. I love this. Like, first of all, like, Kevin Owens deserved that beatdown. You just can't go smashing people's property. But second of all, the fact that we had the swivel chair in the back of the van, like this A-team van, and you have the slow dramatic turn, like, Seth Rollins would have fit in tonight on the crossover as a villain, because that was maybe my favorite Seth Rollins moment of the year. Way.
This is almost like one of those vans where you would expect there to be like computers, like
Yes.
back there, like a hideout type of control center thing. So maybe that's what this used to be.
Oh, that was wonderful.
Yeah. So Rollins reveals that he has, in fact, at least on this episode, been working with AOP. Rollins says, "It's come to this, Kev. It's a shame. I'm sorry." And he delivers a curb stomp to Owens as he stands side by side with AOP. So at this point, the heel turn is complete. What did you think of how it was done? Spinning chair aside.
I've liked it. Everything from the night after Survivor Series, where you had everybody kind of walk out on Seth, to this moment here, it makes sense. Like, I think, what they were trying to do with Bayley, where she felt like she was being a role model and she was being a leader and a hero, but in reality, she was being a villain. Like, it didn't quite work with Bayley, but with Seth, it fits, in part because of how fans feel about him, due to his social media behavior, where he thinks he's the hero of this story, but actually he's the bad guy. I've loved everything about this Seth Rollins heel turn. Like, it's been probably one of the best things on Raw, the past month or so.
So Rollins follows this up by directly just coming out into the stage and cutting his first real heel promo. He comes out and says to the audience, "What do you want from me?" He says, "You and I, we used to get along. And then it went wrong, and he's trying to figure out why." He says he did everything right, didn't take any nights off, fought through his injuries, laid it all on the line for each and every single one of us, stuck his neck out for everybody, and not just in the ring, but in the media as well. But he says he continually got disrespected, and he's sick of it. Rollins says he was actually telling the truth last week when he wasn't working with AOP, but the truth wasn't good for any of us because some flavor of the month loudmouth like Kevin Owens said so. So Rollins says the truth isn't good enough, so he asked the crowd in 2019 what is good enough for them. He beat Brock Lesnar twice, brought the title back to Raw, and that was still not enough. At this point, the crowd starts chanting, "You suck." Rollins says, "I hear ya." And Rollins says, "You want to push me? Well, it's time for Seth freaking Rollins to push back." He says, "Your negativity has become a self-fulfilling prophecy that has turned your fiction into fact." and it's turned him to stand side by side with the AOP. So it was your fault, Nate. It was my fault too. It was all of our faults. What a promo from Seth. What do you think?
I loved it, man. Like, this was Seth Rollins getting he went full Lex Luthor on this one, where, it's not my fault that I'm hurting you. I was trying to save everybody, but you didn't appreciate that. And because of that, you've pushed me to this point where now I have to destroy you. And so I loved it, man. Like, from bringing in the social media stuff to bringing in how the crowd has responded to him, it works. And like, this heel turn and this promo in particular was so good that it almost makes that terrible Fiend feud worth it.
Yeah, seriously. I mean, when you look at like the year that Seth Rollins has had, I mean, certainly it was not a good year for many reasons, but to see this at the end of the tunnel, like, almost makes it all one really wonderful long story when you like go back and watch it. And obviously at the beginning of this year, I can't imagine this to have been like sort of the final destination.
No.
But once they had the opportunity and they went there with Seth, the man knocked it out of the park with this promo. Like, I don't know if you caught him on backstage last week, but he was saying very much the same things. Like, he doesn't know why, like, all of a sudden the audience doesn't like him. And here it felt like he was taking those very same real frustrations off of his chest, but doing it in a heel promo. And it was fucking wonderful. Like, this was, I think, one of those rare heel promos where you can totally understand. And in fact, it maybe even in some ways have sympathy for the guy, because everything he's saying is not wrong. Yeah. He never missed a night off. Like, he fought through his injuries. He fought hard every single time, yet we didn't like him. And obviously there are some very clear reasons for that. Is because, like, he got really lame. His promo sucked. His voice was inauthentic, and he was an asshole on Twitter. Like, these are all whatever, like, arguments. But I can totally buy that somebody like the character of Seth Rollins sees us, like the audience, as, you know, people that have betrayed him, and using that as just like fuel to be a bad guy.
Yeah.
Fuck, this was good. I love this.
Yeah, this was excellent. And again, the best villains are the ones that are the heroes of their own stories, the ones that have valid reasons for their actions. And yeah, like, so everything, the Bray Wyatt feud, the Brock Lesnar stuff, the stuff with Becky, the social media stuff, it all makes sense that this is where this character would end up at the end of the year, you know, having gone through everything that he's gone through. And so, like, my only question, Wade, with all of this is, will they do anything with Becky Lynch, or will they just ignore it?
Well, that's so fascinating. What's so fascinating is that right after Seth Rollins exits the stage, the next person to come out is Becky Lynch. So I'm almost wondering if they were purposefully like drawing our attention to that future interaction by having Becky's entrance placed right here. Because you have to imagine the fans would immediately thinking about her reaction to Seth Rollins' actions, right? So I imagine that they would do some sort of segment where I think they would try to have Becky distance herself from what's going on with Seth in a way
no way. Oh, no.
Yeah.
Becky's going to want a divorce.
Or she's going to, you know, oh God, I hate to even think about that. You know, it could be that they'll just completely ignore it, but I almost felt like this was almost too convenient to like, to not like, you know, get the audience to actually try to think about what Becky must be thinking. So we have another segment up next. Becky Lynch in a handicap match taking on the Kabuki Warriors. This is similar to what Charlotte did last week. The man, Becky Lynch, says she's here to collect an old debt. And she elaborated on Twitter about this, about showing a photo of her title loss to Asuka from this year's Royal Rumble. And apparently, I guess this is what she wants to get revenge for. So we come off of a distraction from Kairi Sane as Asuka gains control over Becky. Lynch fights back, dodges an insane elbow, dodges an attack from Asuka. Becky hits her leg drop, but Asuka avoids it and locks in the Asuka lock. Becky reverses and puts the Asuka lock on Asuka herself, but Kairi drags them out of the ring. Becky dives off the apron and eats a knee from Asuka, and they tease a count out, but Becky barely makes it. Eats another knee from Asuka as she returns into the ring for 2. The Kabuki Warriors hit a Doomsday forearm strike for 2. Then Sane hits the insane elbow as Becky gets her feet up. And then a mistimed rock bottom, unfortunately, from Becky to Asuka was, you know, a blemish on this match. Becky hits the disarmer on Sane as Asuka again pulls them out. And then Asuka just grabs a steel chair ringside to attack Becky with to cause a DQ. What'd you think of the match?
It was solid. I mean, you know, with the caliber of performers that you had, it wasn't going to be bad. I think the Kabuki Warriors are being successful in spite of the direction I think the company has given them. Like we really still don't know a whole lot about Asuka and Kairi Sane and why they've chosen to go this route. And I don't think we'll ever get it. The one thing though that, and we will get to it when we get to the segment later with Charlotte, Way, is I kind of like the storytelling, but it feels like they've done it backwards, because we started this thing a month ago or so with a tag title match with Charlotte and Becky versus the Kabuki Warriors. So like we started at the end and now we're going back to the beginning. And
we had the Natalya defeat of Asuka, and somehow that leading into like this program with Becky taking Natalya's place. Yes, is weird. Yeah. As far as this match goes, I thought last week's match was really good. It really pleasantly surprised me seeing Charlotte in the great match she had with the Kabuki Warriors. I didn't have the same expectations for this, of course, but I thought this was, you know, a bit of a far cry from what that was. Wasn't that bad, but I wasn't nearly as good. Some of it mistimed. I didn't really feel the fun or the urgency of the match last week, and in fact, kind of found myself like feeling like this went a little bit too long with too many near falls and too many kickouts, especially if you're delivering a non-finish at the end of it. You know, I don't know if I would have booked this match, period, just because you're retreading on so many of the same things and delivering an inferior version of, I think, what came before. And really, how were you supposed to book yourself out of this one? You know, it's not like the Kabuki Warriors could lose, and neither could really Becky lose in this scenario. So I just wasn't really that big of a fan of the match itself. But it does end with a big table spot as Kairi delivers an insane elbow through a table. The OC are backstage, and AJ says Gallows and Anderson are the best tag team in the world, and they've proven this because they beat the Viking Raiders at Crown Jewel. So they threaten that they will take the belts from the Viking Raiders at some point. So building to that, unsure when that match will be, but Gallows and Anderson versus the Raiders seems to be the next program in the tag team division. AJ says he's going to beat Rey for the U.S. title tonight, and if Randy Orton sticks his nose in their business again, the OC will end his career forever or for life. What do you think of AJ as a villain?
AJ's good, and I like the OC, but it feels kind of like they're treading water a little bit. Not that what they're doing is bad, but it feels like they're just kind of spinning their wheels. Like I think AJ and Randy can do some good things. I just don't know if this is the spot where I'd have the OC right now on the card.
Man, AJ, I think is like, I do find elements of him being this over the top villain endearing, but lately on this particular run, I've actually just found him really generic. You know, just the guy who just, I don't know, yells. He's got a gimmick that I feel offers very little in terms of newness or creativity.
Especially when you contrast it to what Seth just did.
Yes, absolutely. You know, like I don't have any real motivation about like who this AJ Styles is other than like him being just sort of a cartoony villain who just like acts cocky. He kind of just speaks in like a very generic mid-card level pro wrestling villain type of way. So I would definitely want to see a bit more kind of, you know, evolution perhaps in that entire act. Becky
Evolution's the other group that's going into the Hall of Fame way.
Shit, you're right. Well, not yet. Not yet.
Not yet. It's saving that for next year.
That'll be Flair's third ring. Becky is in the doctor's office, and Charlotte asks how that went. Becky says, fine. If it meant I'll get my shot at Asuka anyway. So in the hallway, Kairi and Asuka attack Charlotte with a steel chair. Erick Rowan is taking on this jobber in this match, Nate. The bell rings, and this jobber just immediately exits the ring, runs towards Erick Rowan's cage, runs it all the way up to the ramp where he leaves it, and Rowan at this point chases after it. And this jobber just circles back around the arena, back into the ring as he gets the ref to start the count. Man, this was the smartest jobber I've ever seen. This guy immediately shoots up to the top of the jobber rankings.
Oh, my man tried to hit him with that 2K cheat code right there. Like we're gonna get this count out victory and we're gonna get out of town with a paycheck. But I liked it because it added some creativity to this whole Erick Rowan thing, which to be honest, Wai, I haven't really been feeling as of yet. But at least this was a nice little wrinkle on the standard squash match.
So the ref's starting to count, the crowd's going crazy for it, and at this point, Rowan realizes what's happening. He runs back into the ring in time and just destroys this poor guy. So much so that the ref had to call the match on a TKO, which I like that they did. Anyway, I love how they're booking. Like you said, Nate, like finding an interesting wrinkle with all of these just otherwise typical, pretty, you know, jobber squash matches. And I love how they're booking these jobbers as if like they're either really clueless or just suddenly people with the biggest balls in the world, like this kid. In the end, the goal really, of course, is to make Rowan so angry that he has a reason to destroy these guys, and they always get to that point. I thought this was very creative and entertaining. Charlie is in the back with the Kabuki Warriors, and they cut a cocky promo in Japanese, and this is when Charlie says she needs to learn more languages. So Asuka then speaks in English, challenging you to challenge us for their tag team titles. And we see Becky and Charlotte both in the doctor's office backstage. And they both just have this moment where they're both like beaten up sitting there and they both just agree to fight them. And they decide to up the ante by challenging them to a tables, ladders, and chairs match. So that's what we'll be getting on Sunday. And then, Nate, we have the Monday after the weekend update. The debut segment with Angelo Dawkins and Montez Ford in the same style as Saturday Night Live's weekend update. So it's a new faux newscast as they're talking about ongoing storylines. And their first zinger was about Asuka with green mist looking like she's eaten Baby Yoda. And they go on to talk about Disney Plus. And this is, of course, complete with audience laugh track as, you know, SNL because of the parody. USA has a new reality star after the Fiend's attack of The Miz. because The Fiend will now be debuting in The Fiend and Mrs.
That's not even a joke. That's not even. I put up with a lot with these WWE shows, and obviously we have to give them some leeway here and there. But that's not even a joke. That's just putting one word in the place of another word. It's not clever.
Not clever at all. Well, Nate, how about this one? Tonight, another monster with mood swings got her wish. Wait a second. Am I doing that right? I probably fucked it up. Rusev gets his wish, a match with Lashley, and they tell Rusev to get out. Okay. I fucked that one up probably, but this one I think I'll get. Dawkins says King Corbin has Napoleon complex, and Ford corrects him, saying that Corbin is bigger than the both of them. Napoleon complex is for short people, but Dawkins says he might be bigger than us, but not where it counts. I found that it's this about as funny as a weekend update on SNL, which is to say I didn't find it funny at all. Like, I think the idea is cute, the execution is fine, but the punchlines were like really corny, and perhaps like corny bad comedy is perhaps what they're actually going for. But what were your thoughts?
Any enjoyment out of this was due to the performance, not the material. I think Dawkins and Ford did as best they could. I also maybe the one thing I did like is that they actually had some continuity and they referenced the Viking Raiders match, because that was my thing. I was like, these guys just had a match and now they're showing up here like everything's cool, but at least they acknowledged that they got beat up an hour ago.
Yes. As a recap segment, I thought this was perhaps an interesting change up from the style that they were doing before, which I think had run its course. I think the visual treatment is strong. It gives them something like uniquely their own. I'm willing to give it another chance, but the expectations are certainly higher when you try to deliver comedy in a setting like this. And unless you expressly try to tell the audience that this is supposed to be bad and you're not supposed to laugh.
Right.
I feel like it'll just end up being flat for a lot of people, but I mean, I'm curious to know how other people feel about this. They might love it, they might not.
And I think the big thing with the Street Profits is what got them over was them being themselves, like their sensibilities and their sense of humor. And this certainly, while I think they did the best they could with it, this felt like somebody else putting words in their mouth and words that weren't funny.
Or just the concept, even. I don't know if I would see these two coming up with this on their own.
Yeah.
I could see a version of this, but I certainly I don't think for a second these guys are hanging out at their house or while eating food, joking about Baron Corbin having a Napoleon complex, but not being bigger than the both of them where it counts, or the Fiend and Mrs. I don't see that at all. So,
Baby Yoda.
she's looking like she just ate Baby Yoda. Our main event, Nate. The U.S. title, AJ Styles taking on the champion Rey Mysterio, and AJ was working really fast here at the beginning, so much so that Rey was saying, "Easy, bro, easy." Gallows and Anderson at some point come out. This distraction allows AJ to gain advantage as we head to a commercial break. Really cool spot as Rey Mysterio, coming back from break, slingshots himself through the ropes, delivering a sunset bomb to AJ into the barricade. Rey Mysterio's springboard moonsault is caught, but he turns it into a swing DDT. He's about to hit the 619, but Gallows is blocking it. Anderson then distracts him, allowing AJ to hit an Ushigoroshi for 2. Rey is sitting up top. He's about to deliver a Hurricane Rana to AJ Styles. And you can clearly tell that the spot they're trying to go for here is a Super Styles Clash. Yeah. But unfortunately, AJ, seemed to lose his footing, and they both fumbled down here. And unfortunately, here to recover, AJ decides to just pick up Rey, power bombs him, hits another Styles Clash on the mat. At this point, this is when Randy Orton appears, and they're really close at this moment to 11 p.m., so much so that the signature already comes up even before the close of the match. So Randy doesn't hit an RKO, but instead he just causes another distraction, which allows Rey to suddenly small package AJ for the win, and the show immediately fades to black. So they were clearly running very close.
Yeah, I was surprised. Like I was all expecting an overrun, and like, no, we got to get out of here because we got to get Modern Family on the air. And so yeah, that caught me by surprise a little bit.
They stopped overruns for a while now.
Really?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Oh, I'm glad somebody came to their senses because I was all hunkered in way. I was like, we're gonna be here till 11:15, 11:18 maybe, but no, we got right to the Dunphy family, and I was like, oh, that's interesting.
They have hard outs, but what is it? NXT of course has them now. So
yeah, and again, they gave them to the better show.
Yeah, I guess, or the show that kind of maybe needs the boost a bit more.
Yeah, that is true. The show that's actually in a war for ratings. But no, I thought AJ and Rey, botch aside, I thought they had good chemistry in the ring. Seeing them in kind of matching outfits, I don't want to steal WH Park's gimmick here, but seeing them in matching outfits just made me want to see them team up for some reason. I was like, oh, that'd be an interesting little tandem.
At another time, yeah, that would be cool. I thought it was a good match between two, obviously like two of the best of all time. But
Yeah.
I found here they were delivering a very smart conservative TV match that was very well done, very entertaining. Unfortunately, it all kind of fell apart in the end, not just with the finish with the Styles Clash, but also just the awkward timing seemingly of everything. But I like the booking in theory. AJ is so concerned about Orton that he ends up losing, not because of an Orton attack, but because of his paranoia. Meanwhile, Rey keeps the belt, and you add more fuel to Randy versus AJ. So while it's not yet official for TLC at the time of this recording, it may be very shortly that we'll get Randy Orton versus AJ Styles. So just to update everybody, coming off of this go-home show for TLC, we have Rusev versus Lashley added to it, likely a tables match, Murphy versus Black, Charlotte and Becky versus the Kabuki Warriors in a TLC match. Very likely Orton versus AJ as well. And then also, in addition, on the SmackDown side of things, already confirmed, we have Miz versus Bray Wyatt, New Day versus Revival, and Roman Reigns versus King Corbin in a TLC match. How excited are you for this show?
I mean, it should be a solid card way, but I'm not ready at all for TLC. It feels like we just finished with Survivor Series and are dealing with the aftermath of that. And so it feels like, yeah, we're rushing into this too quick for my taste. But that being said, I think there's at least 3 or 4 really strong matches on that card. I don't know if I'm going to be like super enthusiastic to tune in that night, but maybe I'll watch it next Monday instead of Raw.
We go to the forum now, forum.postwrestling.com for your feedback. Nate, will you be joining me for this feedback? I mean, we don't have a... All right, wonderful. So forum.postwrestling.com in our Post Wrestling Cafe section. What did you guys think of Raw? On a scale of 1 to 10, 5.77.
Oh, wow.
What would you rate the show, Nate?
Honestly, like I know 6 out of 10 is the gimmick, but I was and maybe it's because I was expecting a bad show with the divorce stuff off the top, but I was pleasantly surprised by a lot of the stuff that we got tonight. Like Seth's promo was amazing. Andrade Carrillo was a good match. AJ and Rey outside of that botch was a good match. Street Profits and the Viking Raiders was a good little quick match there. And then, I know we've been joking about the jobbers all night, but I like the way that they're finding different creative ways to kind of use these enhancement guys to help out some other people on the roster. So I'm going to give tonight's Raw, I'm going to give it 7 Earths out of 10.
Ooh, 7 Earths out of 10. I think I'm going to go with your usual rating, Nate, of a 6 out of 10. I thought this was an enjoyable show, I think, for all the reasons you listed. I suppose it was just a 3-hour drag that like really did hit me on this particular show. And I guess that usually takes a lot to recover from. But I will say, like, I think these shows continue to move at a pretty good pace. I like the way that they're scheduling or they're formatting the whole thing with like cliffhangers bleeding from one segment to another, repeated interactions of like, singular storylines throughout the entire course of a show. Like we had multiple appearances from Kevin Owens throughout the evening, multiple appearances from Becky and Charlotte throughout the evening. So at least it has a way of like keeping me a bit more engaged. But let's see what you guys thought. We start with Paul from New Jersey, who says, post Survivor Series, I've enjoyed Raw for the most part, and I thought tonight was excellent. Strong promos, coherent storytelling, and showcasing new stars. Everything KO Rollins was terrific. Seth Rollins cut one of the best promos of his career tonight. Humberto overcomes the odds and gets a great reaction from the crowd, defeating Andrade and Zelina. I wonder if Sin Cara was watching, enjoying the Riggs and Murda vibe from Becky and Charlotte. I don't know who that is.
Riggs and Murtaugh from Lethal Weapon. Danny Glover and Mel Gibson.
Oh God! Please don't at me, everybody, for not having seen Lethal Weapon.
To Wai's defense, I don't know if you want me to tell the listeners this, but Wai's been drinking all night, so he's had a little bit of the Foiley. So
I think we got a new T-shirt idea. Me and you, Nate, Lethal Weapon.
Oh, hey, I would love that. I would love that. Somebody get on that.
The more Sami Zayn, the better. Few nitpicks. The cuck angle might have been tolerable if it didn't go on for so long, and Lana wasn't the worst actress. Also, that Street Profits Weekend update was friggin' atrocious. Otherwise, a very good show, 7.5.
All right, let's go to Andrew from Cape Breton. So since getting back from the night shift, this is the first Raw I've watched since August, and I must say, while this whole angle with Rusev, Lana, and Lashley has sounded awful, I can't help but really like Rusev. He is very charming, and he's an excellent babyface. Now, granted, Bobby Lashley should probably be wrestling for the world title and be a top star on Raw, but I guess this really has been his calling since returning to the WWE. It's either Sami Zayn and his burner accounts or bad Rusev angles. But at least Rusev is over, right? The show flowed pretty well tonight, except for the end, which seemed pretty abrupt. Speaking of which, 5 out of 10 show.
Yeah, probably abrupt because they ran out of time. We got an MJ from NJ who says, 2 highlights. The Monday after the weekend update was great. Best use of street profits in weeks. When asked, what do you call that move to the outside? And Joe answers with sunset flip into the barricade. He's great. Good finish to the show, ruined by a hard cut at 11. Raw as a 1-hour show is perfectly fine.
Yeah, I did notice that when I was watching this way. I was like you said, that third hour, especially after, because all the superhero stuff was over at 10.
Mm-hmm.
So that third hour, I'm coming down off of, the Crisis on Infinite Earths and the Black Lightning mid-season finale, and I'm here watching the weekend update. I think that might have been the first segment, coming back at 10 o'clock. And I'm like, really? This is what you do, Vince McMahon. This is what you give me.
It was that. I thought it was like, for me, I really felt it during the Becky Kabuki Warriors match, which, if I think it was a little bit shorter, I might have had a bit more tolerance for it, but it did just kind of hit me for that one.
All right, we got one more piece of feedback here from Nas in NYC. Seriously, Vince got bored of the Street Profits already? How could this have happened? Are there any other tag teams for the Viking Raiders to even face on Raw? I mean, there's AOP.
Well, I mean, I can't really... Obviously, Nas is referring to like the Street Profits losing to the Viking Raiders, but I can't say that they've gotten bored of them. They built their own segment for them on this particular show.
Yeah.
So
I mean, Vince actually built them a studio with a working light rig that your man. Damn, now I'm drawing a blank. Sami Zayn's newest acquisition, Mojo. Mojo's probably working the lights.
Yeah. He's doing the Chiron. He's set up the green screen and everything. Yeah.
Matt Hardy's running the camera. Maybe that's what all the Jobber Division guys are doing. They've got secondary jobs on the crew as well.
Yeah. So I don't know if it's so much that they've gotten bored of him, because they're certainly featuring them more. But I think it's more so maybe, as Nate said, they're very much in love with their charisma, that they feel like they are willing to sacrifice their in-ring credibility, perhaps.
Yeah, and I think there's a balance. So I hope they don't lean too far with the comedy stuff. Nas continues, I hate to admit it, but this stupid angle has gotten Rusev over. That was the hottest the crowd got all show. Seth Rollins' heel promo was excellent. Raw has been good recently, and I hope the ratings turn around soon, because you can see that they are actually trying to get new stars over. Do you think these releases are an indictment on AEW as to how Vince doesn't see them as a credible threat anymore?
Could, as I kind of alluded to earlier on, I don't know if a set of releases like this would have taken place, let's say 3-4 months ago, with AEW just kind of looming like that. I think now that, again, like the cards are kind of on the table and we see that AEW has its own challenges to go through, a roster that's really getting bloated on their side of things too. I do sense less of a concern. At the same time, I think it should be mentioned that, how much value is there to keeping employees that don't want to be there?
Yep.
And again, like, what sort of a PR hit are you going to be taking by looking like you are, I don't know, keeping people around in just such a petty manner. The other thing I heard Brian Alvarez mention today on Wrestling Observer Live was that, Luke Harper, I believe, if I think previous reports are to be believed, like his contract was really going to run out somewhere around April anyway. So this release right now, coupled with a 90-day no compete, I mean, essentially it just gives him like maybe a month, ahead. So it could be WWE perhaps, seeing this and saying, okay, rather than the guy running out his contract himself, why don't we get a bit of like nice publicity from it, looking like a bit of the good guy giving him his release. I don't know. Some of that is just a speculation, but I lot of it could be possible.
You hit on a good point though, Wai. Like why? Like obviously you can't do this for everybody because everybody, has gripes with their boss from time to time. But why would you keep somebody that doesn't want to be there and that you're not using anyway? We kind of talked about this on the Nubian Wrestling Advocates a little bit with the ACH situation. Like obviously that's a much different story than Luke Harper or the Ascension or anybody else that was released. But I don't see it as much as Vince not caring about AEW as making the best move for his own roster. So, because there's getting back to our jobbers, there are guys that really aren't doing a lot on the main roster. And so why would you take up spots? Why would you use up resources for guys that aren't on TV and guys that aren't happy? So it makes sense for the guys. It makes sense from the WWE's perspective. And like we said earlier, I don't see any of those guys really going to AEW just because it doesn't fit in my mind what AEW is trying to do right now.
And speaking of the Nubian Wrestling Advocates, Nate, where can people find that as well as all of your other work?
Yes, thank you, Wai Ting. The Nubian Wrestling Advocates, you can find that. Right now we're doing it monthly. It may pick up in the new year, but we just released our December show featuring myself, Kris from LA, and Rich Fan from Pro Wrestling Torch. He hosts a deep dive. And so we talked about the Jim Cornette situation. We talked about ACH because this was right after ACH had said that he was quitting on Twitter. And so we talked about that a little bit. We gave our thoughts on the New Day podcast, which is excellent. And when you get through listening to Post Wrestling, I would recommend that show for all of the listeners out there. And then we just kind of talked about the Wednesday Night War in general between AEW and NXT. And you can find that at the Kings of Sport Patreon. The first episode that we did last month with Andrew Thompson, that is available for free right now. But then the episode that we just did with Rich and all subsequent episodes of the NWA podcast will be available to patrons only. So, sign up for $5 and you get to hear some wrestling talk from maybe a different perspective than you're getting from some of the other shows that you listen to out there.
It's a show I'm more than making time in my schedule for, and it's just incredibly intelligent discussion from a number of really intelligent minds. So I highly recommend it, as well as a number of your other Patreon shows available at, what is it? Patreon.com.
Patreon.com. Yep. / the Kings of Sport.
Perfect.
And thank you for those kind words, Wai. I appreciate it. And if anybody wants to find me on Twitter, this might not be the best week for me for Twitter because college football, NFL. I still got one more night of the Crisis on Infinite Earths to get through, so I might be, kind of away from Twitter for a while.
Don't you tweet about all that?
Tonight I was, and that's the other thing. I was watching Raw, watching Crisis, and watching Black Lightning, and I'm one of the co-hosts on the Black Lightning podcast over at the DC TV Podcast Network, and I was live tweeting Black Lightning while flipping back and forth watching Raw. So that's an experience.
So how many podcasts do you actually host, Nate?
Oh, let's see. The quick answer would be infinite podcasts. But we've got Kings of Sport, We got the NWA podcast. We got, of course, the Rocky Mountain Via Picture Show here on Post Wrestling. We've got the Black Lightning podcast. I'm one of the co-hosts on the Main Event over on the Place to Be Nation Network. And then I do, sporadic shows here and there. So 5 dedicated shows and maybe sprinkle in one or two other shows during the month.
That's amazing. Well, you are one of the hardest working people, and I think one of my favorite broadcasters, period, Nate. So find all his work at the number 8, MOZAIK for everything. Thank you so much for sacrificing your evening for us, Nate. Hopefully next Monday you can dedicate a bit more of your full attention to Crisis. I'm looking forward to hearing more about that. And,
I mean, it's never a sacrifice. In the words of our Queen, Wai Ting, it's never a sacrifice when you're doing things for the people that you love. So I just hope the listeners keep me in their hearts.
Wonderful. As I mentioned earlier, I'll be back tomorrow with John Pollock on the Patreon for Rewind Away, ECW on TNN, December 31st, 1999, and then a million other shows the rest of this week. So we'll be keeping you company for the entire period, and we'll probably even bother you even if you don't want to listen to us. We're just gonna automatically start playing because we'll have so many shows. So thank you for listening, everybody. Talk to you soon.